Welcome back everyone. This is video number 2 in my series on creating a network board game. In the previous video, we set up the splash screen and created placeholders for the various scenes of the game. This time, we will focus on completing the main menu. I'll assume you already have the project loaded, so let's start by making sure we're working with the main menu. Double-click on the main menu scene. Next, right-click in the hierarchy and add an UI image. Unity will automatically add the UI canvas and UI event system for you. To make sure we can see the image, let's put the screen in 2D mode and then press F while focused over the screen. Drag the main menu image that we imported last video into the source image location in the inspector. Zoom out in the scene so that you can see the borders of the image in relation to the edges of the canvas. Then drag the 4 corners of the image to match the corners of the canvas. There, your background for the main menu is done. Let's see how it looks. Some of you may have an issue where the image doesn't fill the whole screen. That's very easy to fix. Click on the canvas in the hierarchy, and then in the inspector, change the UI scale mode value in the canvas scaler component to scale with screen size. Now, let's see how that looks. Great. Let's keep going. The next step is to start adding the buttons. We'll want buttons for Start Game. This will take the player to the connection screen. Credits. This will display the credits. And finally, Quit to exit from the program. I like to group my controls together on a panel. Once I have the buttons where I like them, this allows me to move the panel around and all of the buttons will move at once. To do this, right-click on the canvas in the hierarchy, select UI, and then select Panel, and a panel should appear in the scene. The panel may not be transparent, but we can fix that later. If your panel covers the entire surface of the canvas, shrink it down so that it only covers a quarter of the space. We don't need it that large for what we want to do. I'm going to take a short moment to do some housekeeping. I want to change the name of the image in the hierarchy to be Background Image and the panel to be Button Panel. This is not absolutely necessary, but clear naming of objects can save a lot of headache later. There are 2 ways to rename an object in the hierarchy. The first way is to right-click the object and select Rename. The other is to click on the object and hit F2. Either way puts the name in edit mode. To create a button, right-click on the button panel in the hierarchy, select UI, and then select Button. This will create a new button in the very center of the panel. Let's move it so that it is located in the top left corner of the panel, leaving a slight margin for the edges. To create the second and third button, make sure the newly created button is selected in the hierarchy and press Ctrl D. This will duplicate the object. Do this again and you will have 2 new button objects. All you need to do is drag and drop the buttons in the scene so they fall below the first button created. Back to housekeeping. Let's change the name of the buttons real quick. We'll name them after their functions, so we will have Start Game button, Credits button, and Quit button. Unfortunately, changing the name in the hierarchy doesn't change the text on the buttons. Each button also has a text child object. We will need to expand each button object and select the text object. This will expose the text attribute in the inspector to the right. Change the text on each button to match the action. Pause the video while you do this and I'll join you in a moment. Now that we have our buttons and have them properly named, let's take care of the color of the panel. Select the panel and click on the color attribute in the inspector. Change the alpha level to 0 and the panel will become transparent. Let's hit the play button and see how it looks. It works well, but the buttons are a bit plain. We'll address that in a later video. Final step on the panel is to shrink it down so that it is closer to the size of the buttons. Grab the lower right corner of the panel and drag it to the upper left. The buttons move because we didn't set the anchors for the buttons. This is really easy to fix. Select all 3 buttons in the scene and then click on the anchor widget in the inspector. We want to anchor the buttons to the top left. This will make sure they stay a fixed distance from the top and left of the panel. We can now resize the panel from the bottom right without affecting the placement of the buttons. The UI portion of this video is mostly done. But before we can do anything else, we have to write some code. Let's create a new folder in our assets called scripts. Next, we will want to create a new script. Right-click on the scripts folder, hover over create, and then select C# script. We'll call the script main menu since that is what we'll be using it for. Once the script is created, double-click on it again and your IDE should open. This is all of the code that we will need to react to the buttons when they are pressed in the menu scene. I've named the functions so that it is clear which button will be using them. The first 2 functions will perform a similar action. They will load a new scene. This is done by either passing the name of the scene or the index of the scene to the load scene function. If you prefer to pass in the scene index, refer back to the build settings to see which index is associated with each scene. The code for onQuit is a bit different. We want to be able to stop the execution of the program if it is running within the Unity editor, as well if it is running as a standalone program. The code I have in this function takes care of both cases. After you finish keying in the code, return to Unity and make sure we don't have any errors. If there were any errors in the code, they would be shown in the console window at the bottom of the Unity window. Looks good for now. Next, we need to attach the main menu script we've created to some object so that it is available for use. We could create an empty game object for this, but it shouldn't cause any problems if we just attach it to the main camera. Select the main camera in the hierarchy and then drag main menu script into an empty space on the inspector. Now to connect the buttons to the code we wrote. Select the Start Game button in the hierarchy, then press the plus icon on the OnClick section of the inspector. This will add an event that we can respond to. Change the object to main camera because that's where we attach the script. Next, click on No Function and it will list the components that are on the main camera. Hover over the main menu item and it will show a list of functions. Select the OnStartGame button function from the list. Pause the video for a moment and complete this process for the other 2 buttons, but select the appropriate function from the list when it is shown. Okay, let's see if we have it working. Press the play button at the top and try the Start Game button. If the scene name in the top bar changes to connection, you've done it correctly. Stop the program from running and let's try again with the Credits button. If the name of the scene changes to Credits in the top bar, then this one works as well. Finally, let's try the Quit button. Stop the program from running, restart it, and then click on the Quit button. If the program stops running and you are returned to the Unity editor, then it worked correctly. That's it for this video. Hopefully this covered the basics of creating a menu system, how to respond to button events, and how to load a new scene. I know the original plan was to also create the credit screen, but I'll save that for the next week. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below.